Mac guys here on Birds 365, and it's Mike Gill time. He's got a little bit of a new setup here. You're not out in the dining room here. Where
he's
you
in the
today,
studio.
Gill?
He's in the 97.3 studio. You know?
I'm going to the Phillies game tonight, so I had to get here a little early to get some stuff done before my show.
Nice.
Very nice.
Red October. What are you predicting tonight, Mike?
Well, yesterday on my show, I had 4-1 Phillies, so I'm hot right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exact score. I put out Wheeler's numbers last night, and I said 7 innings, 1 run. Went 6 2/3 with 1 run. So I was damn close myself.
If you're together, Jody, we might have some. You know, I recall sitting next to you at a World Series game like 2009 or something, and we were banging these picks left and right out, man.
Well, and I got the Phillies winning again tonight. I want to see 2 games and done.
I did too. By the way, Nola last year in the closeout game against the Cardinals, he was excellent. I expect it again.
Jody had a little extra pep in his step this morning because he won a big parlay last night.
And I don't usually play baseball parlays, but it's Phillies in the playoffs. So yeah, we went out on the limb a little bit last night. All right, Gil, what's the shirt? You're not repping a college? You're just not repping an area? What are you selling today?
I'm just rocking a down the shore, surfing guy shirt, just being comfortable. Nothing. I thought, you know what? I drove here this morning and I thought to myself, oh, man, I don't have a T-shirt on for the guys.
Yeah, it happens.
That's all right.
You got Brian Propp and I think Roy Halladay up in the back.
Yeah, Halladay. By the way, the Brian Propp jersey is signed by the entire 87 Flyers.
Wow.
There
we go. You got to get that framed, Mike. You got to get that framed the entire.
I've had that thing since about 1987, by the way, and it looks, it's not a smear, not a smidge, nothing.
Yeah,
that's when you put it on the wall. You just have to be careful when you drink too much because that's the only way that thing's going to get smeared.
I drink a lot in my studio listening to some of the callers and the text messengers.
All right, Johnny and I haven't gone there yet, so let me go there with you here. Yesterday, Brian Johnson was asked about the 3rd and 11 call to hand it to Kenny Gainwell up the gut. Now, Sirianni the day before had kind of taken the bullet and said, well, that's kind of on me. I said we should run the ball on that play. I let Brian do his job. I don't call too many plays. But on that play, I particularly called the play. Don't put him on the truth-o-meter on that one. How did you shake out with 3rd and 11, Kenny Gainwell, who, oh, by the way, fumbled? Thank you very much, Lane Johnson, for falling on it. Right. Could have been disastrous. How did you ferret out that play call, that decision, and the fact that the Eagles kind of dodged a bullet on it?
I didn't like it, and there's a couple reasons why. Generally, like you see teams run the 3rd and long with like the delay draws and stuff that they think the defense is expecting a pass. You've got the defense back, and it gives you a 10-yard cushion to try to delay and get that run. But for where they were on the field, and as he said, we have a field goal kicker. And by the way they were running the ball, not very effectively. I was a little disappointed with that. I didn't like the play at all. And then the he said, she said, where Sirianni, hey, we got it the last time. Okay, that's great. But in this instance, down and distance of where you were on the field, certainly didn't like it. And look, I know Brian Johnson's feeling his way through. I didn't love the game plan. Now he scored 34 points. It sounds asinine.
Yeah.
But how many people are watching that game with 8 minutes left saying, all right, you can run this game out, just demoralize this team. And that's kind of, to me, I'm trying to find out what the identity of Brian Johnson's offense is. And to me, the only thing I can come up with is this team demoralizes teams. John, you tweeted out a week ago. They took the will of Tampa Bay. I felt like they could demoralize and take the will of Washington and didn't take the opportunity. And that kind of play there, it kept them alive in the game when they really could have, because you weren't using your will. You weren't being that team. And then they tried to say, well, this is who we are. Let's do it. And it didn't work. So it was like a mixed messaging I felt with the whole between the.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate there and say, all right. And Tampa Bay is a tremendous run defense, and they did, at least on paper, and did demoralize them. So it's not like the Eagles, and the Eagles have done that in the past. New Orleans came in here once with the #1 run defense. They ran it all over them. So they have done it in the past. But in that game, they weren't that effective running the football.
No.
Before the end of the game, certainly when compared to what they had been against Minnesota and Tampa, they were not effective at all, if you want to use that comparison. And that is probably the best defensive front they're going to play all season. So I'd mentioned to Jody, I expect this to be a pass-heavy game for two reasons. One, for that, and two, because they wanted to get the passing game going. They know they have to get the passing game going because Buffalo's on the horizon, Kansas City, Dallas, even the Rams. You're going to have to score some points and be a little bit more explosive. And hey, Jalen Hurts, 319 yards, 2 touchdowns. AJ Brown, what did Mike Tanier call that Emmanuel Forbes, that poor guy, the goofy rookie? I don't know why
he had to deactivate his social media, Forbes.
Yeah, poor. Yeah. By the way, that's bad. I mean, yeah, he got a lot of whats, and that's absurd. That was a really difficult matchup. And guess what? I blame Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio for that because they
decided to put him on.
Yeah, they have Cobb Fuller's having a great season. They have Benjamin St. Juste, who's a big corner who has some experience, and they let that poor guy I was just talking about, speed, because he's the best athlete they have. They put him on AJ Brown. You're not ready for that, and they put him in a bad spot. But the Eagles' game plan I kind of liked. It kind of made sense to me. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy, but I do understand what Jody's question is on that 3rd and 11 play, because it seemed like it was mixed messaging all day. If you were, hey, we're running this game out, 8 minutes left to go, and we're just churning and burning out the yards, nope, I probably don't have a problem with the play. But they never got into a running rhythm where it felt like no matter what play we call, we're getting this. I mean, there are times where they turn around and hand the ball off, and they're just chewing 6 yards off at a pop. If you go 3rd and 6 and you get 7, 8 yards there, I don't know that we're complaining as much, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a draw on 3rd and 11. You're trying to hit them. You're trying to surprise them. And then maybe it turns into 4th and 2. You go for it. Yeah. And he didn't, and they fumbled and they didn't execute. But I think Jake Elliott, what a 36-yard field goal. Yeah. I mean, every team runs draws on 3rd and 11 at some point, and most of them aren't successful. But you're basically doing it to try to fool somebody who's expecting pass. I mean, everybody does it, but it usually doesn't work.
All right, so let me try it this way. We quote PFF a lot here on Birds 365, and I think John and I are on the same page. We give them their props. They're just due. They do a lot of work. It doesn't mean we have to agree with everything they come up with as far as the number goes. But the number that they have on Kenny Gainwell right now is the 53rd back of 56 backs who qualify in the National Football League, play enough snaps, get enough carries. 53 out of 56. We know the Eagles, quote unquote, trust him. Should they?
Well, after he fumbled, they might trust him less. So I can tell you that. I know we see that how many times in this league. Guy fumbles and he kind of falls his way down the depth chart. I guess they trust him more. Probably, John, you could attest to this because he blocks better than the other guys. It's one of the reasons why you gain the trust of the coaches is who blocks better. Swift, not a great blocker, stepping in there and sticking his nose in there. The whole thing, though, to me, I think we all have seen that Swift is the more dynamic, explosive, big play back. The problem with Swift has been he can't stay healthy, so they have to find a way to get carries for somebody else to make sure Swift isn't being a 20 to 25 carry kind of guy. And right now, Gainwell's that next guy, which I guess is disappointing when you got a guy in Penny who averages 6 yards a touch when he's healthy in Seattle and he can't get on the field. So the fact that Gainwell has more trust and production from the coaching staff than Penny does, I think you have to go back to a question we asked, I think, 2 weeks ago. What is Penny on this roster for if he can't get carries? Because Gainwell, to me, I'm sorry, he just, to me, looks like a blah guy. He doesn't have the burst. Now, maybe that's because you're watching Swift with such burst that he looks like he's in quicksand, but he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the explosion. He just doesn't have that same playmaking quickness that you want from that guy who's the change of pace kind of guy. And I guess if your first guy is the fast guy, your other guy, the change of pace guy, but that's not what Gainwell's game was supposed to be, right?
Yeah. No, and Jody's fair point there. I mean, should they trust him as much as they trust him? Probably not. He hasn't shown anything.
Oh, but he was great in the playoffs, John. I don't know how many times I heard
he
that
was
during
better.
this offseason.
He
had
better.
one really good game. He played really well against the Giants.
Well,
the other 2 games against San Francisco and in the Super Bowl.
No, but
he wasn't great in either one of them. But everybody lumps those games together. Oh, he was great in the playoffs.
I think
great in a playoff game.
That he didn't make a lot of mistakes. I think from the Eagles standpoint, that was there, because Mike brings up, if you if you just look at the running aspect of it, DeAndre Swift has been top 5 back in the league to this point. And in fact, I'll pull up the PFF rankings. So if you just say running, they have him number 6. So right there, top 5 back in the league, number 6. Pass blocking, he's bottom 5. He's been awful as a pass blocker. But that's becoming a lost art, another lost art in the NFL. There aren't a lot of great pass protecting running backs. And even though Kenny has been better than DeAndre as a pass protector, he hasn't been good either. So, yeah, and you bring up Rashad Penny. Maybe Boston Scott can carve out a bigger role in that aspect, because they need somebody to be able to pick up a blitz, and they haven't done that well. That's one of the low key. Again, we're nitpicking because they're 4-0, but they don't have a running back that can pick up a blitz right now.
Well, and how much then, guys, is that contributing to some of the decisions and some of the things that we're seeing in this offense?
Oh, a lot. I think, I think it was one of the games. It might have been New England. It was New England or Minnesota. I heard a lot of, the offensive line didn't play well. I'm like, they played pretty well. And Jalen's running for his life. And a lot of it was the backs couldn't pick up what they were supposed to pick up. And some of it's on Jalen as well. If you're bringing more people, and it's probably Minnesota because Flores blitzes 60% of the time. If you're rushing one more player than it's counted for, that's on the quarterback to get the football out. I mean, you're not supposed to be able to block an extra. If you're blocking 5 and they're bringing 6, or if you're blocking 6 and they're bringing 7, that's on the quarterback to get the football out. But yeah, running back and pass protection has been an issue with all of them.
I also think that the Eagles aren't going to sweat that. I'm not sure they put as much emphasis on it.
No, because they don't have.
I think it's a league-wide thing, and they do trust their quarterback to right. If the numbers don't match up, get the ball out of your hands very quickly. All right, Mike, need your take on this one. If Nicholas Morrow has 2 more sacks this weekend, will the comparisons to Seth Joyner begin? John just finished talking to Seth Joyner about should he stay in there rather than N'Kobe. Could it go to an even higher level and people start comparing Nicholas Morrow to Seth Joyner, one of the all-time Eagle great linebackers?
Well, Seth Joyner is an all-time a great Eagle linebacker, but Nick Morrow is the only Eagle linebacker to do what he did on Sunday. He is the only linebacker in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles to have 10 or more tackles, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble in the same game. He has been highly productive, and I guess it gets to the point of what do you do with this kid when Dean is back? Does he and Dean share the field together? Does Dean just usurp him altogether and he goes back to the practice squad? I really thought they did a good job. Sean Desai, I see, taking a lot of John Gannon hits now because the secondary has given up a lot of yards and first downs and stuff. But I thought he did a really good job of picking his spots with the blitz. He saw we're not getting home with our front, but we'll utilize the impact that our front has. And they sent some delayed blitzes, and Morrow was the recipient of 3 sacks, not because Morrow is Seth Joyner or
Lawrence Taylor. Forget about Seth. It's
because
Lawrence Taylor.
because if you watch Jalen Carter, he takes up 2 and 3 guys so that Morrow has lanes that look like DeAndre Swift running the football to go get the quarterback. So Morrow's taking advantage of what's in front of him, and good for him, by the way. Yeah, I think that story is going to be interesting when Dean is back. What happens to that linebacker position, which has kind of been, solid in his absence so far.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't looked at it. It's not like, oh man, I don't know I can't even think of his name right now. All I just remember, Nate Geary. It's not like 47's on the field where
Poor
teams
Nate, man.
47 at.
Nate's still taking grief, isn't he, John?
Nate's still taking shots, man. Poor Nate Geary.
He was not good.
No, he was not.
But go ahead and tell him. Maybe Gill missed the first 42 times you told the story about why the Eagles coaches like Nate Geary.
By the way, they loved him. And people would get so angry. I probably said it to you over the years, Mike. They would get so angry at me for telling them that the Eagles coaching staff, like Nate Geary, Ken Plagiol, who was the linebackers coach, loved him. Jim Schwartz loved him. And one of the reasons they loved him is he played an entire season with a sports hernia, and he was banged up, but they had nobody else. So they had tremendous.
The coaches fell into he's a Philly guy. He's Aaron Rodgers all of a sudden.
No, well, if you don't have a better option and a guy's willing to go through that, Jody brought up Deshaun Watson earlier. He's shutting himself down.
Yep.
If you don't have another option and you're a coach and you see somebody fighting through that, yeah, it's understandable. You gain respect, but bottom line, he wasn't a good player.
To be fair, he was a safety that they tried to move to linebacker. He was too small, not good enough. And but my point being is Nick Morrow, by the way, Nick Morrow was not some guy it's not like, where did they find him?
By the way, Nick Morrow's a safety. They made into a linebacker. He played safety in college. Yeah,
that is true. But he did have NFL linebacking experience on a bad team that he got to play and
ton of experience. Yeah.
Yes.
3,600 snaps. He got 3 sacks.
And that said,
4 sacks. I'm
3
sorry.
sacks coming in.
Yeah.
That said, Nick Morrow, it's not like they just found this guy and what a great – he has been a starting player in this league. To have that filling it now, but are you intrigued at all what happens when Dean comes back?
Well, that's why I brought it up, because when Seth asked me the question on our postgame show, I immediately dismissed it. And I said, no, of course, Nakobe's back. He's starting middle linebacker. And I started thinking about it after, and I said, well, why am I saying that? And a lot of it is, I got to be honest, is because of the way he played in college, because we haven't seen him enough to know what type of player he is. And I started thinking, well, if Nick Morrow keeps playing like this, and you're right, everything you said, Mike, he's the beneficiary of playing behind that defensive front, but he's playing well. Do you take a player playing well off the field? Ultimately, if you're asking me, yes, I think the Eagles will take him off the field. I think Nakobe Dean will be the starter once he's back and healthy. Is that the right decision, though? I think that's a fair question to ask.
And my question is, why can't they rotate the 3 linebackers that they have? And sorry, Christian Ellis, you are seriously the odd man out. But when Nakobe comes back, why can't they just rotate Cunningham and Morrow and Nakobe? They didn't do it at all last year. I don't know if it's a philosophical thing, but Mike Tenier, who we had on in hour number 1, called it making decisions by package. Who are you going to be? What the other team do? Fine. If it just means guys all getting chance, all rotating, guys staying fresh by having a couple of snaps off, I don't think that's a bad thing. But the Eagles looked at it as a bad thing last year. Either that or they didn't think that Kobe could step in and even hold the fort. I'm very intrigued to see if they'll, when Nakobe comes back, if they'll have all 3 of the guys playing, or if one just goes to the bench. Would not be my choice. All right, Mike. They go out to LA cross country. I mean, we got Eagles history of cross country. This is a new team. It changes every single year. Is that of any concern that they got to go all the way across the country to take on the Rams this week? We know they got a better roster, but is they're
going to have more fans as well.
That's
they'll
true
have
too.
a
Stadium.
Yes. No, I mean, this trip they've done plenty of times. They've won out there. They won in the soccer stadium, beat the Chargers. They've won in this stadium and beat the Rams. I don't see. I feel like the whole cross country thing has kind of lost its mystique. It used to be, oh, well, the West Coast teams are coming here. They're playing at 9:00 in the morning.
Body clock game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of lost. I mean, Seattle came over here the other night and whipped up on the Giants. And yeah, I think more and more of these cross country trips are kind of losing their mystique. No, I mean, anywhere the Eagles go, they're going to have fans, as we know. They're going to travel well. And quite frankly, this is one of those matchups where it's very intriguing because it is a game against a team that has skill players that everybody knows. It's like playing the Vikings. They got skill players. You know who they are. Their line is horrible. So this is a game that kind of plays into the Eagles' hands where, okay, we're weaker in the secondary, but your line stinks. So the matchup really is, can the Eagles' defensive front win and dominate that battle? Otherwise, if they can't, and this is what I thought happened in the game last week, I thought they should have dominated up front with more pressure where they didn't have to blitz. That didn't happen, so they blitzed, and it ended up working. But I thought the Washington line did a good job, as good a job as you can imagine in the interior, because I really thought Carter, Fletcher, Jordan, Milton, Marlin would have got enough push to get Hal off his spots and make him kind of make erratic throws. He was comfortable all day. And you talk about the game plan and execution, Jody, play calling. I thought their game plan was great, but I thought Hal executed the game plan fantastic. He made the throws.
Yeah, I thought he played well.
Byproduct of their line holding up. If their line doesn't hold up, Hal can't step up in there and make some of the throws he made.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Sam played pretty well. And I think that was underrated. You know, they had such a bad game in Buffalo. You were going to get the overcorrection. And Eric Bieniemy made some nice adjustments, got the football out quickly. So tried to limit the Eagles' defensive front as much as possible. Sometimes you got to give the other team credit as well. One thing we haven't talked about is this is the worst possible week to lose Cam Jurgens with Aaron Donald waiting in the midst. There's a guy who can wreck a game.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, I'm surprised how quickly the Eagles defaulted to Sua Opeta, Mike. Now, he played pretty well when Cam came out of that game at halftime. And technically, the Eagles' offense was better with Sua than without him. But boy, man, Aaron Donald, they're going to circle Sua Opeta. They move them all over the place, depending on where your weakness is. That's the obvious weakness. Aaron Donald's going to be all over Sua Opeta. How did the Eagles deal with that?
Do you go with the classic Reggie White run right at him, that mold, or do you try to use the other side of the field and go behind Mailata and Dickerson and kind of get away from him? Do you anticipate seeing a run game and try to neutralize him there? Short pass stuff. That's what, the Eagles see a lot. Because of their pressure, they have teams that just kind of nickel and dime them all day long. Will the Eagles kind of implore that situation? And then that's the time where you start to ask the question. All right, is this finally the game? You're going to have Donald. We're going to get the ball out quick. Dallas Goedert, you're going to have the big game this week. So there's a lot of chess match going on, but you're right. Because of the teams finding your weakness, Opeta right now, I guess if you're circling the line, even if Opeta was a Pro Bowler, he'd still be the weakest guy on the line, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how scary a thing is that? He's a Pro Bowler, but he's the weakest guy on the line.
That was Isaac.
I guess you have a good offensive line there, huh? Yeah.
That was Isaac last year. Isaac was he was a Pro Bowl alternate, but yeah, he's the weakest guy on the line. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
He's got the most pressures in football, by the way, Donald this year. And second is Carter.
And Carter plays a lot less, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's 87 less
snaps. Now, see, a lot of people point that out. Carter's played less. Carter, even at this stage, people are picking it up very quickly. He does not get the attention Aaron Donald gets. The fact that Aaron Donald does what he does with the attention he gets, it's unbelievable. And it's been that way for years and years and years.
By the way, the Chargers just traded J.C. Jackson.
J.C. Jackson back to the Patriots.
2 late-round picks. Would that have been a better move than Bradley Roby?
Well, he's an outside corner.
Right.
Same thing. They need
Yeah.
a slot corner.
They need a slot guy.
Yeah.
I
So
like
they
Jackson.
but that's the thing. They wanted to get, obviously they wanted to get Bradbury back to the outside.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Just for the
And-
people who John, are going to ask.
Yes.
When
Hashtag
Roby,
no, right? Hashtag,
when Roby
Hashtag
gets
no.
up to speed, then yes, chances are Bradbury will be moving back out. All right, Mike. Last thing, the aspect of the game that will give the Eagles the win over the Rams is blank, or the aspect of the game that may add up to the Eagles taking their first loss of the season is blank. Fill in the blank. Give me either the key aspect why they win or the key aspect why they lose.
well, I think the first one is what I mentioned. The offensive line of the Rams is not very good. The aspect would be if the Eagles pressure Stafford, and he'll probably complete a lot of passes. But again, the Eagles, people don't like this type of defense, and that's the thing. Washington went on a lot of long drives to score. The Eagles defense is predicated on, we're going to give you 9, 10, 11, 12 play drives, but somewhere in there you're going to make a mistake or end up with 3. Last week, they didn't end up with 3, and that's the difference. The Eagles defense did what they do, yards, catches, go for it, but you're not getting 6 or you're going to make a mistake. Washington made no mistakes, and they converted for 6. Can that happen 2 weeks in a row? Are the Rams going to go on 9, 10, 11, 12 play drives? We'll see. They make a lot of mistakes, but to me, predicated on the Eagles' defensive line getting pressure and forcing Stafford to get the ball out quick, and the Eagles making the plays and forcing them into 3. That would be, to me, how Philadelphia wins. If it's the other way around, it's because they didn't get pressure, and you saw Puka and Tutu and
Puka and Tutu.
That's their wide receiver duo right now.
Yeah, and those guys just catching the ball, a lot of missed tackles. You see these guys all the time that give the Eagles problems. They catch the ball in the slot, and they reverse spin up the field. They get first down. They keep moving the chains, and they convert them into 6 as opposed to 3. If the Eagles are holding you to field goals, long drives, you're in trouble.
Mike Gill, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you very much for hopping on with us. We will talk to you next week. Enjoy yourself at the Phillies game today.
All right, boys. We'll see you.
Thanks, Mike.
Gill from
at Mike Gill Show. Make sure you listen today, 2 to 6, if you're in South Jersey.
So he's got to hustle to get up to Philly by the time the first pitch.
Yeah, he'll probably leave early. I don't know. He's still there. Are you leaving
maybe
early?
that's why he's taping some interviews that they'll play to give him a
maybe
head start.
There's savvy radio people there, Jody.
I'm gonna go way out on a limb and tell you the Walt Whitman Bridge is going to be crowded at 7:00 tonight into the city. Yeah, people will be coming in.
I've been in that pain many, many a time.
I will be going over the Ben Franklin much earlier than 7:00 to go to tonight's Phillies game. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Come back. We got to put a bow on this show.